Turn up the dial, feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember I share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the group. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your host, Dr. Dean Bertram.
Good evening, all my fellow weirdos and weirdettes. Welcome to Talking Weird on the Untold Radio Network. I'm your host, Dean Bertram. And as you might be able to tell, I'm I think, borderline laryngitis. I got just back from one of my most incredible weekends of my life, which was the 8th annual Midwest Weird Fest, combined with the 16th edition of the Night of Horror International Film Festival, which we just moved to America this year. The festival was loaded with guests and sold out audiences and incredible just times with audiences and filmmakers interacting. And I can't say how much fun I had. If any of you came, I know some of you did, thank you for attending. Next year it will again be the first full weekend in March. So if you didn't make it this weekend, think about taking a trip to Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And I have with me tonight two of just the amazing filmmakers that we had at the festival this year. In 2020, tonight's guests, one a screenwriter and one an indie filmmaker, moved from Los Angeles to rural Missouri to make weird, low-budget horror movies. They have never regretted this decision. In addition to making movies together, they also run DieDieBooks, an indie press that publishes books about scary movies. DieDieBooks has been featured in Dread Central, Nightmare Nostalgia, and The Pitch KC. And you can visit that site at diediebooks.com. On this episode of Talking Weird, they will not only be discussing their publishing endeavors, but also their unique and terrifying feature film, It Doesn't Get Any Better Than This, which we just screened at the festival that I mentioned. The incredible feature film blends fact and fiction in a found footage horror film featuring nearly 20 years of archival video. So this isn't like your average found footage film, which takes place in the course of maybe a weekend or a week. This is something which was 20 years in the making, and it covers a couple who are tonight's guests when they buy an abandoned duplex to shoot their next indie horror film in. And they are delighted to find random strangers are drawn to the building, gathering outside to stare at it to stare in a zombie-like trance. What begins as an effort to document the cult quickly escalates into an increasingly ecstatic quest to see just how scary their real-life horror movie can get. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to Talking Weird my very new friends as of this past weekend, Nick Toti and Rachel Kempf.
Hello.
Hi.
Greetings. So good to see you again. And I said Toti. Is it Toddy or Toti? I always get
You
names
got
wrong.
it. It was Toti.
Toti, excellent. I thought it was, and then I second guessed myself, which I should do. The good news for you guys is I often talk a lot, but I have this borderline laryngitis tonight, so I'll shut up and let you do more of the talking. But before we do this, because we're going to go all over the place, but I thought, would you like to play your trailer now, or would you like to have a chat first?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do this. Let's play this incredible trailer, for it doesn't get any better than this.
Love it so much. I was just watching, and it's not with kind eyes. I feel like having them watch is like I can feel it changing me the more they see me. Just makes me really sick and sad. I want more. I want it to be like even more intense.
Please leave me alone. Please leave me alone. Please leave me alone. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
So great. And we'll get into that little disclaimer at the end about you have to see it in theaters as we go forward. But maybe you can start as early as you want to. Maybe tell me some of the genesis of this film. How did it start coming together? And that might be an answer that you have to start 20 years ago. So
Well, yeah, I mean, we've technically, it's got footage in it that goes back, 20 years. But we never intended anyone to see most of that footage. It was just the sort of like home movies you shoot with your friends and only watch for nostalgic purposes. But I guess in, what was it, end of 2021, Nick sent me an email that said we were looking for a place to shoot what's going to be our next movie. Nick sent me an email with the title Bad Idea. And the whole email was just a real estate listing for the most like horrible nightmare rundown duplex you've ever seen. And the line, "What if we bought this shitty duplex and shot Homebody there?" And then a month later, we were the proud owners of this terrifying set to shoot scary movies in.
Well, and so we had this movie, the one we're shooting this summer, Homebody, that takes place in a duplex, and so we knew we wanted to shoot in a duplex. We didn't know we were going to buy a duplex, but when we got this place, and the only reason we bought it was because it was so cheap. But it was also perfect. And when we got the place, we then go inside and it's just a nightmare. You know, it's just covered in graffiti, swastikas, pentagrams, 666, also Christian stuff. Like, it's like there's this graffiti battle between good and evil where like Christians had come in and had written Christian propaganda over the satanic propaganda. And we were just like, oh, and there's like this big mural in dedication to crystal meth, we think, but it also has all these Disney figures. It's like a giant crystal, and then there's all these Disney figures and like the Joker and Harley Quinn and stuff around it. So just all this amazing stuff, and
it's filled with trash.
Oh yeah, filled with garbage.
Yeah,
filled with creepy stuff, like creepy pictures of old timey people.
Right.
Used syringes.
Yeah.
random photographs of like dudes partying in Vegas, and
and we thought, well, we're not going to waste this wonderful production value, so why not just make a found footage movie like in this place before we have to clean it up and make it look respectable-ish for our next shoot.
Yeah, so basically that day, the day we closed on buying the place, we actually, before that, I think we started shooting it, because we shot footage with the realtor showing us through it that you do see little snippets of. So we basically started shooting it immediately, and then in that spirit, we started figuring out what the story was as we went along. And since we were doing that, we also were like, well, we've been shooting footage of ourselves and especially with our one friend, Christian. And we had all this footage that it was really just stuff we did goofing off together for years, going back to before I even knew Rachel, going back to when her and Christian were friends in college. And so we just started digitizing all that stuff too, and figuring out how can we work all this stuff in, and made it into this story about friendship and God. And also I really had been trying to make this documentary about Rachel and Christian that sort of revolved around the fact that they do seances together all the time. And I just started filming these seances of them trying to contact ghosts. And so I had all this footage of them just doing these seances together, which they're not complicated seances. They would just sit in the dark together, hold hands, and meditate really hard, sometimes for like 45 minutes or an hour. And I would just sit there and film them, or stand there and film them.
Wow.
And I just have all this footage of this we had this idea that we were like, let's just do this forever.
Yeah.
And so
we'll be 80 and we'll just be having seance. I still feel like we should keep, we did film one seance post shooting, because we were at the Lemp Mansion, like doing like a spooky overnight ghost hunt. And we were like, well, we would be remiss if we didn't shoot a seance here. But the last domino that fell, I feel like, before this became the movie that it is that we were like, well, what can we do? What can be the scary thing that's going on? Because we don't have the money for like effects, the money or the time or the wherewithal to pull together.
The movie
effects.
had literally no pre-production.
Wow.
There's people in Kirksville. One of our friends, he's actually in the movie, said that there was a guy that like, and apparently multiple people in Kirksville have seen this, that was like staring into his house once, just standing on his yard, staring into his house. And this has happened to multiple people in this town. So I guess it's just a thing that happens. And we were like, what if the scary thing was just people staring at the duplex? We do not know if this would be effectively scary, but for some people it is.
Yeah. There's something that's, we sort of had the faith that it was just an odd enough thing that if you just keep showing it, it becomes unnerving, and you just keep building from there. And, like there's nothing inherently scary about somebody watching you, but not threatening you, like but what if they just keep doing it? It's the uncanny, like it just gets under your skin, because you're like, I don't care if this is actually an active threat. I just don't want it to keep going on. And right. Of course, our characters are just thrilled with it the whole time.
Thrilled with it, then just keep poking at it and keep making bad decisions to pursue it until they lose their grip on reality a little bit. And I feel like we also maybe lost our grip on reality a bit while we were making this movie.
Yeah, we went completely insane while we were making this movie.
Yeah.
But, only if sanity is knowing the difference between what's real and what is fake. But,
right.
It's good to lose sight of that every once in a while, I think.
There's a wonderful comment here from Sandwich Savant, and he says, or she says, I dig you guys. It's like you're a modern day Mark Borchardt from American movie, but smarter. I like Borchardt, by the way, a lot too.
I've got a deep love for Mark Borchardt, but and Coven.
He might be
Oh,
a
so good.
secret genius. I don't know. Like when you see parts of Coven in the American movie, it kind of looks great. Like,
Yeah, I
oh, we
know.
watched it.
We did
We
watch
did
it.
watch it, and it was kind of great.
Yeah.
Did you see one of your fellow filmmakers at the festival had a Coven T-shirt on that I was so
Yes!
Yeah,
Ron
that-
Hinkle,
yeah,
Mhm.
from
Gunfighter
yeah,
Paradise.
from Gunfighter Paradise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. it
He
was
played
great.
Confederate soldier too, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
that was his role. Fantastic. We're going to talk more about the film, but I know some of our audience, I'm sure when we start to talk about seances, because this is a network that looks at the paranormal and the weird in the real world, perhaps more than the cinematic, more often than anything else. Have you got some seance stories that were spooky you can share with us?
Yes, I do indeed. So the very, very first time that we did a seance, and the reason that we started filming all of these seances, is because Christian and I were like, I don't know, we were just like high or something at his house, and we were like, what are we gonna do? And then I was like, we should have a seance, and he was like, okay. And I was like, I mean, our seances are literally just like, let's light a candle and then we're going to hold hands and be real quiet and either stare at each other or the candle or close our eyes. And I'm like, okay, look at me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to freaking close my eyes and I'm not going to open them and I'm not going to let go of your hands until we get a ghost, basically. And he was like, okay. And I was like, are you with me on this adventure? And he was like, yes. I was like, so serious. And we sat there probably for like 20 minutes, but like our dog was there and he at a certain point just started like freaking out. And then like we started hearing I started hearing, I should ask Christian what exactly, he was like, I was getting weird shit. I was hearing weird shit. I was feeling weird shit. Yeah, it was just like hearing dogs like everywhere, which there was just one in the apartment, but yeah, there were like barking dogs everywhere. I suddenly just felt terrible,
Wow.
yeah. So that went on, and we both were just eventually like, I'm too scared. I was probably the jerk who was like, no, I'm too scared. But afterwards we were like, why'd we do that? We've always just all we wanted was to get a ghost, and we were so close and we just gave up. So then after that we were like, well, we should do more seances because then maybe something spooky will happen again. And we like strategically positioned our dog there because we're like, he's gonna freak out. Just nothing. He slept. The next one, Nick's filming, and he just sleeps through. Like the dog just sleeps through the whole thing. Never sounder. Yeah, that was one. But yeah.
What other creepy? Sorry, go.
Oh yeah, we had another. This was not part of the movie though. But we did. Me and Christian's boyfriend once had at the Lemp Mansion. We had a creepy Ouija board session too, where we were doing it. I don't even know if I told you this or not, but we were doing it at like 2 a.m. In the basement of the Lemp Mansion, because like somebody had like these two amazing old ladies had like an EMF detector, and they kept seeing like they were getting like crazy reactions whenever like Christian's boyfriend was stand in front of this one mirror. So I was like, me and you, we're going to go downstairs. We're going to do a Ouija board right in front of the mirror and we're going to see what we can get. And both of us just started hearing like a man's voice talking really quietly, like behind us, and then also like the Ouija board just kept moving. I don't know. Maybe he was moving it. Maybe I'm not moving it. Nick doesn't believe in any of this stuff, by the way, paranormal fans. I am the skull or the Mulder, and he is the Scully.
He's the skull.
To my Mulder. But yeah, no, the Ouija board, we kept like asking it questions, and it was just going to off to one side. And then finally, like Christian was like, we should just ask, like he came down, he was like, we're just going to ask yes or no questions. And finally we realized it was just going to the no. It was so sad. It just didn't want, we were like, do you not want to talk to us anymore? And it was like, no. And we're like, okay, we're out, we're done.
Oh my goodness. I could see you guys doing a paranormal like TV show, but with a twist, like with your own personalities. Have you ever thought about doing something like that?
He would never do it. He does not. I'll let you speak for yourself. You would?
Well, I mean, show me the money. You know, I'm not kicking offers off the table.
Right.
These duplexes don't buy themselves, you
That
know.
you know what? That's not a bad pitch though for like a paranormal show, is that one person's a complete skeptic and the other person is a believer to the point of probably being really gullible. Like,
Fantastic.
it's just, yeah, it balances things out.
And I'm not necessarily, you know, I'm not like, I'm more agnostic than atheistic about these things. You know, I await being convinced, you know.
Yeah.
So far, ever since I brought the camera out, there's been nothing I've seen that's convinced me. But
supposedly they don't like cameras. So
that is what Ryan McDuffie said. So shout out Ryan McDuffie. And it could just be my camera that's scaring the ghosts away from Rachel and Christian.
Except for Hugh.
Yeah.
That was
Hugh,
the other ghost that we found while doing this. Well, the one ghost, actually, I should say, that we found maybe while doing this. We were filming. There's a part in our movie where me and Christian are like running through the duplex, like calling for Nick, who's wandered off, and we're like, Nick. And at one point we're like walking down these stairs and you hear me going, Nick, and you hear Christian going, Nick. And then you hear Nick, not in my voice, not in Christian's voice. I played it for not in Nick's voice. I played it for both of them. I'm like, is this one of you? And they're like, no, definitely not. But it's like very like clearly coming through on the audio. And we've basically decided there's like there's two explanations that are super weird. And one of them is that a person was just walking by at the precise moment that we were saying Nick, and decided to get in on the fun. And the other one is that there was just a ghost under the stairs calling out to us. So
there is also a third explanation.
It's not fun.
But well, the third explanation, which is, you know, me as the skeptic, I went back and watched all the footage and found that at the exact moment where this voice shouts my name, I was actually holding the camera and hiding from Rachel and Christian in a place where it would have made complete sense for me to shout my own name as they're shouting my name just to fuck with them. But it doesn't sound like me. That's why it's weird. Like it's actually the one that whenever we first found it, I was like, oh, that may just be a ghost. And then we just got back to work because like, it turns out when you do get evidence of a ghost, like the movie doesn't stop being made. You know, you just go like, okay, next scene.
I played it for him and Craig, like called Christian on FaceTime. Christian, we got a ghost. And I'm like, listen to this. Is this you? Is this Nick? And we're all just like, yeah, that's none of us. What is that? It must be a ghost. And we all just went, huh? Well, just talk to you later, I guess. Anything else? It's like there's this really good line in was that Nicole Kidman movie? The
Others?
The Others.
Oh yeah.
And Nicole Kidman's daughter goes, well, I mean, Nicole Kidman's character's daughter, the little girl goes, Mommy, what if we see a ghost? And Nicole Kidman goes, then you say hello and you go about your business, which was literally what we did. So we also out there, just say hello.
We also have this thing where Rachel has a lot of nightmares and or she'll have these like hypnagogic hallucination things that happen when she's falling asleep, and she sees things and she'll wake up or half wake up, or I'll wake her up when she's kind of freaking out about it. And we realize this thing where, you know, a ghost version of something being in your house is always better than the non-ghost version of that thing being in your house. Because we were like, well, wouldn't you, at least it's a ghost wandering around, not a human being. Or like a ghost dog is better than a real dog that you don't want in your house being in your house. So like, really the ghost version is sort of like the friendly, happier version of anything. Like, because even if it's a malevolent ghost, it's like, well, I still would rather have the malevolent ghost than just some dude
Yeah.
that's there fucking things up in your house,
It's true.
So yeah, so that's my feelings on
That
ghosts.
is our feeling. And we did, I now remember, remember the Nicole Kidman's advice that once, because when I was getting, for a while I was getting, it might have been while we were making, I know I was getting a ton while we were making the movie. We're getting them constantly. I was getting these just constant, like, hallucinations while like half asleep and half awake, or like nightmares and whatever. And I'm just like, at one point, Nick was like, what if we just said, hello, ghosts, you're welcome here. Just stop being so extra. Like, it's basically like, make yourself at home. Please enjoy our place. We're cool. We like your spookiness. Just don't be so scary that Rachel wakes Nick up screaming all the time. I feel like things a little bit calmed down after that too. Like, it may have just been my brain was like, okay, Rachel.
Yeah, now you sound like me.
Take it down. Yeah. I always want to counterbalance because I always think I know I am like an incredibly gullible person. and I do always want to like put a little counterbalance in my head just to make sure that I don't come across as like aggressively believing as I can be.
Catherine Fourfeathers is a regular viewer and watcher. Thank you for being here with us. Catherine said, love the energy you both bring to you, Nick, and to Rachel. And that reminded me.
Thank you.
That reminded me when you were talking about your nice approach to the ghost, saying just come in, just don't annoy us. You had a similar, this might be how you deal with all the, I guess, the antagonists in your life, perhaps, because you have a similar story about problems with the homeless people who are living in your.
Oh yeah, no, we did. We never actually, when we got the duplex, there were people, like, I assume homeless people in and out of the place because it wasn't secured. The doors were broken. We eventually did secure the place, and but there was still sort of this ongoing, like, people might try to get in. And we also had mixed feelings about that. Like, we kind of delayed securing the place for a long time because it just really didn't matter for the found footage movie that it wasn't full of expensive film equipment, or like we didn't put a bunch of furniture and stuff in it. It was just an empty place. So like, if people want to
sleep in our creepy duplex, like, man, coming out of the cold.
Yeah, it wasn't really that, wasn't a big threat to us. And we never actually encountered anyone, but sometimes we would come in and see new trash or whatever in the place. But there was one time when, after we did fully secure the place, because we did need to eventually so we could start prepping it for the next movie. There was one time where I ran into some people who were living in their car, and the car was parked it's an alleyway that's right next to the duplex rather than a driveway, but they were parked right next to it in that alleyway. And I assumed they were probably kind of eyeing the place for, can we squat in here or whatever. And so I just went up to them and said hi, and I offered to, I bought them a tank of gas and a sandwich, and I told them, can you please let other people around here know that like, we're cool, and please don't mess with our house. And we never had any more problems after that. So I don't know if it worked or if it was just like good timing or
good karma that you put into the world. And like, I don't know.
Yeah. Or maybe they were just like, oh, that place is locked now.
That's also that's another.
But regardless, whatever, I don't know why it worked, but something worked. So yeah.
Wait, but do you remember the single rose that we found there? That one. This is like, it's almost a cliche.
Yeah.
Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, recently we went in there, and it's been secure for like months because we've been doing pre-production. And there was in the crystal meth graffiti closet. This closet is just covered in the crystal meth mural.
I think I have a video of it. I want to find it and hold it up, but keep talking.
Someone we went in there once, and like, there was this had not been here before because we'd cleaned the place really thoroughly as part of like pre-production. and there was suddenly just a like single little flower sitting on like a piece of furniture inside the crystal meth graffiti closet. And we were just like, yeah, I got nothing for this one.
When the house was secure? The
What?
house was the house was
Completely,
secure.
yeah,
There?
completely secure. And we
Wow.
looked like all around, like nothing had been, there were no signs of anything having been like broken into or like anything. So
Oh, here it is. Okay, I found my video of it. I'm just gonna hold it up to the camera and see if we can see it. But so this is me
that's the
walking into.
closet.
I mean, obviously I had seen it already, but then I took this video to show Rachel. There's just this single dry, like kind of pressed flower that was just sitting in there as if somebody had just lovingly placed
Right.
it there for us. Nothing else in the place had been touched. So again, like could be a ghost.
Weird stuff.
Certainly weird.
Yeah, for sure happens around that duplex.
Yeah,
So
and that's not the only unexplained thing. Yeah, we also at one point towards the end of shooting, we had cleared all the garbage out of the place, and then one day we walked in and we found on the staircase going down into the basement there was a crucifix and a stack of children's books, and then like just a couple other random things like an iPhone charger and like a USB thumb drive. And we're just like, what the hell is that? Like, where did this come? Somebody came in here, clearly like at that point it was like, this really seems like somebody's messing with us. But we never found out where it came from. Like no friend ever fessed up that they had done it or as a joke or anything.
Yeah.
But
Nick thought it was me.
yeah, I thought it was Rachel. I made her swear on 10 stacks of Bibles that it wasn't her.
And I never thought it was you. So
Well, that's because I would tell, like, I don't really I don't maintain lies for long periods of time. I don't think.
No. Once when I was in grad school, Nick played a prank on me. I was listening all the time. I was like obsessed with that REM song Night Swimming. And Nick was like, did you know that song is about the AIDS crisis? And I was like, what? It has nothing to do with AIDS. And he's like, no, it is. It really is. And I Googled it, and some random weird website in the world somehow had something like had made a connection to that, but it's like it's definitively not about the AIDS crisis. But like one weirdo on the internet had made that claim before. So at the moment I Googled to be like, you're wrong, I saw this, and then for years afterwards was like, isn't it weird that song is about AIDS? And Nick, I think it was like 5 years later, so it may have been like a long time. We may have gotten divorced and gotten remarried like in the space between when you finally told me I made that up and it was just random chance that some weirdo said a lie.
Okay, I confess. I left the crucifix and the books in the basement.
But
it really wasn't me. No.
Oh, I thought you were about to see a marital breakdown on like live on Talking Weird from Bible and
we do that from time to time.
We do that, yeah.
Just fantastic. I'm going to throw quickly to a question from the audience. Here's one that he's been a guest on the show. He's also the professor emeritus of astronomy and physics at Michigan State University, Horace Smith. And he asks the interesting question: spooky events seem to play a role in inspiring the guests' films. Are they also inspired by particular films or books?
Oh God. Yes.
But
it's hard to say what exactly.
I know Blair Witch was like heavy in the mix. Like you can see it in our poster even. I realized the other day I changed the background of my laptop to just Heather in the Blair Witch with her, extreme close-up shot, and was like, she's wearing a ski cap like I'm wearing in the poster. It doesn't get any better than this. So there's like weird like echoes and influences there, just like I think in certain elements. I feel like I don't know, that's definitely one. But we watched so many found footage movies when we were making this. Like
we wanted to internalize the cliches of the genre so that we could then kind of like, instead of falling into the cliches. We could sort of like, we still want to hit the expected beats of the genre, the subgenre, but we wanted to be able to like play with it. And if you only half know the genre, you're going to just embody the cliches. But if you really understand the genre, you can subvert the cliches and kind of have a little more fun with it and keep the audience a bit more on their toes. I want to get back to the question though, because there's more interesting, like Blair Witch is the most obvious thing that could be answered to that, but like there's more interesting ones, like the Royal Tenenbaums was an influence.
Not even spooky, but yeah,
Wes Anderson. Wow.
Well, at one point I was like, well, I mean, Royal Tenenbaums like plays really heavily into me and Christian's friendship in the whatever the mythology of our personal mythology. It's definitely in the mix, but I wanted during during the intro to the, like, Nick gives this big long monologue to the movie, and let
me pause for a second. That intro, the first 5 minutes or so of the movie, we basically figured out that we needed to explain 15 plus years of friendship and marriage between, and whichever one of those terms applies, between me, Rachel, and Christian. We needed to condense that history into about 5 minutes of intro in the movie. And the movie is set up to look like a documentary. And so we were like, how do you cram this much information into this little time? And we were like, oh, do it like in the Royal Tenenbaums. You know, the Royal Tenenbaums starts with, what's the first line of Royal Tenenbaums?
Arthur. God, I used to know this completely by heart. Royal Tenenbaum bought the house on Archer Avenue in the winter of his 53rd year.
Yeah,
there we go. Sorry,
so we basically needed that sort of like narration, introducing you to the characters, how they interact with each other, what the dynamic is. And so we said, okay, we do it Royal Tenenbaum style.
And then once I had like written the opening monologue, I was like, well, now we need some like little Wes Anderson tableaus to go towards the end. So there's one with like a Ouija board, and then there's one with like some of the duplex stuff and some of the like the stuff from the.
And of course, like nobody's ever spotted this and said like, oh, that's a Wes Anderson reference, because when most people do a Wes Anderson reference, they make it really look like Wes Anderson.
Right.
When we do it, it looks like a bunch of garbage that's been sort of like semi-pleasantly stacked on top of other garbage. So, but the influence remains.
Garbage.
Yeah, the influence is still there. It's just, again, we subvert it rather than follow it.
Normally, it looks like we're just filming garbage, but in these moments, it looks like we're filming aesthetically pleasing garbage.
Yeah. Everybody knows that when we make a movie, we're filming garbage. But what these shots presuppose is maybe we didn't. Sorry, that's another Royal Tenenbaums reference.
There we go.
No, other movies that were references or influences. A movie we made called The Very Last Interview. We actually we were influenced by ourselves, because there's a scene where Rachel is trying to get a reaction out of the people who are staring at the duplex, and that scene was we actually just decided to rip ourselves off, because we had previously made a movie with the author David Shields, who wrote a book called The Very Last Interview, that he asked if we wanted to adapt it. And we did, and that book is, he took all of the interviews he had ever done over the course of his career as an author, and he edited out all of his answers, and then made a book that's a collage of all of the out of questions that he had been asked over the course of his, like, I don't know, 30, 40 year publishing career. And it's a really interesting approach to autobiography. We adapted it into sort of an experimental movie that it is an actor playing David Shields being interviewed by an off-screen documentarian who you never see. You only hear her voice. But so the whole movie, and the David Shields character never talks in the movie. He only answers by either just using his eyes or anything, but it's a 30-minute film in which the only voice you hear is somebody off camera, and the person who's on camera never says a word. And we decided to rip that off and do a scene that was sort of a homage or an extension of that in this movie. Also, Yoko Ono's movie Rape is a big one, which is about Yoko and John hired a camera crew to follow a random woman around one day. And so it's basically just 90 minutes of emotional terrorism. We have a scene in our movie that is inspired by that. And yeah, then
very powerful scene. That scene in your film is incredibly powerful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I was always worried it was gonna people were just gonna be laughing because they were gonna be like, what's so scary about following a person around with a camera? Because normally when you're following somebody around in a scary movie, you're gonna murder them, but we're just following them and filming them. But yeah, it is incredibly knowing that the Yoko Ono movie is this is incredibly upsetting, and this kind of gave this woman a nervous breakdown. Was well, that's our saving grace. Hopefully the audience members aren't what's so scary about that?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an incredibly we won't, hopefully people will get to see this at a cinema, and we'll talk about that shortly as well, but it's rare for a film to make you really uncomfortable. It might be easy to get a jump scare, or it might be easy to have somebody repulsed by a really nasty, physical special effect, a practical special effect, but it's hard to make people feel really uncomfortable. And that scene, at least for me, I felt uncomfortable watching that scene. And, I watch a lot of genre content, so to make me feel uncomfortable, bravo to you guys.
Thank you.
I felt uncomfortable shooting that scene because the other person in the scene, without giving too much away, but we didn't really know the person very well. And so it was sort of just oh, here's, maybe a little chat beforehand. And then we kind of just went into it. And so it was, and we kind of went off script a little bit with it. And not that there was a script, but I kind of, in the do what it takes filmmaker headspace, kind of got more of a reaction out of her at one point than she was expecting. And we all went out for a drink afterwards to clear the air.
And I was can I hug you? You're good, right? She's yeah. She's the only paid actor in the movie, and she was it's my first paid role.
Yeah.
Just a college student. So.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to work in this industry again.
Yeah, right.
I'm traumatized for life.
Yeah, but she was a good sport.
Before we leave some of your influences, and you obviously mentioned Blair Witch, which came to mind, and this is something I regretted not having asked you in the Q&A at the festival after the fact, is I think the best found footage movies historically, and I can think of probably two before your guys' film, and that'd be Cannibal Holocaust and that would be Blair Witch Project, is that there was a verisimilitude about them that had the audience actually doubting whether what they were seeing was real or not. Today, most found footage films follow a formula, and nobody really thinks they're watching something that could be real. Of course, Cannibal Holocaust convinced so many people that it was real that the director, Ruggero Deodato, ended up in court on all kinds of charges, including killing his actors, and he had to bring, his actors to testify that he hadn't killed them. And Blair Witch, I was here, so you guys probably experienced it too. I was here visiting, because back then I lived in Australia in 1999, I think, when that film dropped, and there was a very clever campaign, including a documentary about Blair Witch, setting the audience up to think what they were seeing was probably real. Now, you don't have the finance of probably the budgeting that Blair Witch had after it was picked up by whatever distributor picked it up. And you certainly weren't, killing animals on the screen to make people think that when you killed the actors, you were really killing the actors. But you have another technique, and that is the 20 years of found footage previously, or the real footage previously, and the sense that you're watching the people on the screen are real people documenting this case. So did you really try to make that attempt to go, okay, let's set it up so there's this kind of, is this real, isn't this real? Because I haven't seen that. I've seen that in so few found footage movies where even I was questioning, I'm thinking, how much is this documentary and how much of this is, fictional narrative?
Yeah, I think that we never wanted to trick anybody. That because I mean the way the movie ends, it's which we won't give away, but it's obvious that this is not real. It's not. It's clearly crossed the line into fantasy at a certain point, and but we wanted it for us. What we just wanted was it to look as much like a real documentary as possible. And even movies that do mimic the style of documentary, they still cheat, and we just wanted to try as much as possible to not cheat. And then by working in all that real life stuff, we didn't know. One of the tricks for that, or the rules that we sort of set up for ourselves, was I do have a background making documentaries, and so I know ways to make a fake documentary look real, and that's basically to give yourself the same limitations you would have if you were making a real documentary. So we would do things like, okay, let's shoot a scene not knowing how it's going to fit into the movie. We did that with a lot of scenes. We just had concepts for scenes and we would shoot them, and then we would edit them, and then we would go like, okay, where does this fit? And then we sort of built the story around that, which is more the approach when you're making nonfiction, because you don't get to dictate what happens in front of your camera. So we actually sort of made that the process, or if we knew what was going to happen, more or less, we would shoot it in a way that still provided the opportunity for spontaneity. So that, like, there's a scene where unexpectedly a fire truck comes out, and so we just went along with that, and it makes the scene a lot better. It makes the scene more interesting. And so, yeah, just stuff like that. And so the goal was never in that Blair Witch style to trick the audience into thinking this is real, but it is always to get people to just kind of feel on their toes or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are parts too that I'm kind of like, did we know if this right. was real or not? Like, at one point, like when I was having all the nightmares, like Nick just like, I was telling him like, oh, I felt terrible all day. I've been having all these nightmares. Nick's like, stop, grabs the camera, comes back and is like, and now tell me again on this camera. And then we just shot a whole thing that I didn't even think at the time we were going to work into the movie. But then while editing was like, we need more footage through here. Like we need another scene. And then was like, oh, wait, we have this perfect scene. So like that happened, or like you hypnotized me for that.
Right,
the scene in the scene
that plays in the trailer.
The Q&A
but this is one we can talk about because people have seen the trailer who are watching the live stream. But yeah, in the trailer, that scene of Rachel talking into her phone, is she was under hypnosis when she did that, and it was kind of like I hypnotized Rachel and then made her like take a walk by herself through a cemetery, and then meet me over at the duplex. And then, and then I don't know if you want to talk about it. I don't know how much you remember.
It was I remember lots of several things that I remember. Because you're kind of like, you're sort of like lucid. Well, I at least remember the parts of like I remember the instructions. I don't remember any time you had like a like you would say like sleep, and then I would like fall over, and you would sort of like catch me. I don't remember ever you saying sleep. Is weirdly, I would just remember sort of like waking up. I'd remember doing a thing sort of in a trance, and then I'd remember like waking up. But it was the cutest thing. I was like, this is the best marriage anyone's ever had. He was like, when he first hypnotized me, he was like, you're gonna see a monster or something like that. I can't remember, but you were like, you're gonna look over there and you're gonna see a monster. When I say a word, the word was pickles for some reason. I don't remember. You see a monster, describe the monster. Now you're gonna follow the monster to the cemetery, and now you're like, and then we got there and he's like, okay, you're on your own, walk through here and come back to the duplex. And then we got to the duplex, and he was it was like, the first scene was like that we shot was, he was like, you're gonna look at the hellmouth, like the hellmouth, as if it's
they don't know what the hellmouth
there's
is.
A painting, Rachel. There's a spooky thing that we refer to as the hellmouth on a wall, and he said, look at it like it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And then I just rambled for a while. And then he had me go to sleep and wake back up, and he's like, now look at it like it's the scariest thing you've ever seen. And then like put me to sleep.
And then we edited it together.
And then we chopped it together. Yeah. So, but no, that was the best.
But
that was the most fun scene that we shot. Nick just watched YouTube tutorials all day to learn how to hypnotize me. And he was like, these guys are bringing a really bro-y energy. I don't know if I can do this or not. But you did great. You did great. You got me, probably because I'm so gullible that I can get really, I'm very susceptible. So it worked.
We usually have a hypnotist listening to the show, Ed Schultz, who's also been a guest, and he was also an exorcist for Ed and Lorraine Warren, if you can believe it. He used to be known as the psychic priest.
Cool.
That was what he was known as back in the 70s. Ed would have popped up in the comments. He mustn't be watching tonight, unfortunately. I know he would have had questions for you about hypnosis, but let's, as we're approaching the end, we're still a little ways off, but why don't we shift a little to DieDieBooks, because I bought one of your books on the weekend. I said I had a chance to read it. I think I got it from you on like the Saturday night, and ever since then I've still been in Fest wrap-up world. But it's a book called The Wolfman, and your DieDieBooks series are books about famous, classic, influential, popular horror films. Can you talk a little bit about the DieDieBooks and the type of books you publish?
We've got examples.
Yes.
We got our books.
And wait,
so good.
more fun. If you get them all together on a shelf, it looks super cool because they're black and white. So, or hopefully it'll look cool. I guess time will tell.
Once we only have 3 published so far, but as the series grows, they're going to alternate black, white, and they all line up on the shelf together and will look really nice, and collectors will love them. And they've got fantastic cover artwork. But yeah, the idea for so at the beginning of this recording, Dean, you mentioned that during the pandemic, Rachel and I had been living in LA, and we decided, fuck it, let's leave LA and let's move to the rural Midwest and buy a house and make horror movies. And we also wanted to start this business where we wanted to, it was actually Rachel's idea. But there are other book series that have a similar idea. I believe the first one that did it was called 33 1/3, and it's books about classic albums, each one written by a different author. And I'm pretty good friends with a guy who also runs one about video games. It's called Boss Fight Books. And Rachel saw me reading either a 33 1/3 book or a Boss Fight book, and she was like, man, it'd be great if there was a series of like this, but about horror movies. And I just like threw the book down, and I was like, Rachel, we're going to do that. And then we did it. So, but yeah, we just started reaching out to, and like, I'm a filmmaker. Rachel's a writer. Rachel has a background in indie publishing. And I have a background in motivating people to do stuff that might not make a ton of money. And so like writers are great to work. Writers already understand that mindset. And so, yeah, we just started reaching out to writers that we liked and asking, and that we knew were also genre fans, and asking them like, hey, do you want to write a book? And a lot of people were like, yes, I would love to write a book. Like, and yeah, we announced our first 5 books maybe a bit over a year ago, when we had a Kickstarter for them, and we've published 3 of those 5 now. We actually have we're pretty close to finishing our 6th book, and we have first drafts of our 7th and 8th books that have been delivered. And so yeah, so things are those haven't even been announced yet, but got some exciting stuff coming in the future. So yeah.
I was going to see if you could tease us at all with a little hint of the 7th and 8th book.
I will hint with the 6th book, because it's basically done. We're just sort of finalizing stuff about the draft, and but we're sort of trying to figure out whether because it will probably actually be ready to publish before the 5th book, but the 5th book has already been announced, so we're trying to figure out, do we wait, or do we do because people have already pre-bought the 5th book, and they'll be like,
Right.
oh, where's the book on the Love Witch? You're already
Mhm.
putting this one out. But I think I will give it away. We're doing, no one's ever heard this before.
Wow.
You're
Scoop.
getting the scoop.
Firsts.
We're publishing a book on, and it's also a little controversial because it's like maybe a little more of an art film than a horror film, but we're doing a book on Kenneth Anger's Invocation of My Demon Brother.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to be a really amazing, it is a really amazing book. It's by the author Jarrett Kobach, who's one of my favorite writers. And he interviewed Bobby Beausoleil in prison because Beausoleil is in Kenneth Anger's film, and it was before he'd shot this movie with Kenneth Anger before he got wrapped up in the Manson family killings. And so there's just all this crazy stuff. Mick Jagger did the soundtrack for it. There's all sorts of crazy stuff about San Francisco in the late 60s and Kenneth Anger being this mad genius. And
and that's all by way of saying, because this is what is it, like a 16-minute
it's like it's a 10-minute long.
Yeah, a 10-minute long, but it's amazing. But if you're out there and you want to write, and you're the type of person who's like, I could really like research the shit out of this like incredibly obscure horror movie that I'm obsessed with, like, we'll go there. We'll go there with you, and we will bring the world an excellent book together. So yeah.
Do you? Oh, he said book purchase from during the show from DieDieBooks. No difficulties. Horace Smith, thank you. Do you have any films that haven't been looked at yet? I mean, obviously you do, but is there something you'd love somebody to approach you with? Is there like a film you're dreaming of somebody writing a book about?
Yes, there. In fact, well, and I've manifested some of these. In fact, like some of the authors that we approached were people that didn't know us at all. But like I specifically approached BJ and Harmony Colangelo about writing a book on the movie Sleepaway Camp, because they had both they're a married couple. They had both independently written about the movie Sleepaway Camp. And I was really interested in what their joint perspective on Sleepaway Camp would be. Wow. And that book is now, it's the next one that we have coming out, book number 4. So sometimes these dream projects do just happen. I'm trying to think if there's any.
I feel like we're always saying like, oh man, I would love to do a DieDie book on this. And every single one of these cases has completely flown out of my head over the course of this.
Well, I actually have a list on my phone, but of like DieDie book dream projects. Like I would love to get Osgood Perkins to write a DieDie book about either Psycho, which stars his father, or Psycho 3, which both stars and was directed by his father. Nice. Now Osgood Perkins is busy making movies with Nicolas Cage and stuff, but so I don't know that he's really going to like you want to get into the fast-paced world of indie publishing, Osgood. If you're listening, we want to do a book with you. But yeah, that's one of them. I want to get Darcy the Mail Girl to do one on Prom Night 2.
Gosh, Darcy the Mail Girl, if you hear this, please write a DieDie book
on Prom Night 2.
On Prom Night 2. God,
you've heard it here. We want it. We're putting it out into the world. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any specific movies. I would love to do one on Freaks. Todd Browning's Freaks is one of my all-time favorite movies. I would really love to do a book on that.
Yeah.
And it's a movie that I think was really like had a really bad reputation for a long time, but people are now kind of getting that like this is not a movie that is really like, it's way more complicated than just like, ooh, circus freaks are scary and less than human. So but yeah, I think it's just a movie I love.
Such an important film. I'd love to read a book on Freaks.
Yeah, we recently, and I this has been kind of announced because she posted on Twitter, but we do have an author who is just started writing a book on Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which I'm very excited about. That's because that's just such an amazing movie too. And kind of getting into like the hagsploitation subgenre, which is like sort of equal parts horror and melodrama. So I think that's going to be a really interesting one. And that's one that I'm really looking forward to because I'm going to learn a lot from it. It's a genre that I don't know a whole lot about. I know Baby Jane and I love that movie, but I don't know a lot about like the context surrounding it. So that's one of the fun things about it, is that like we get to learn a lot about stuff that we're already interested in just by editing. So yeah.
A few people have commented on your passion and your energy throughout this chat, and I do think it's amazing that you have been able to chase an independent type dream that most people would have been perhaps too timid to have chased.
Oh, thanks.
We're just faking it.
Great.
No.
Yeah.
we're faking our enthusiasm in order to sell books. So
we are really this amazing, and we do show up our road show of our movie that you can never see online. We do make every effort. I shouldn't say it now because we're going into pre-production for Homebody and we're exhausted and from traveling, but generally speaking, when we're not exhausted and producing a movie, we go on our road show with our movie to little DIY spaces and stuff, and we show up and we do Q&As, and we are this fun in person. So you should come out to see the movie and come out to see this spectacle.
Rachel's this fun in person.
You guys are amazing. No, you guys are amazing in person. And speaking of people who are interested in repertory cinema and screening independent films and screening things outside of the traditional spaces, we have a comment from Asper60, who is actually a husband and wife team, Jay Katz and Asper, who both have a show on this network as well called Down South Anomalies, and perhaps are the most interesting curators in Sydney, where I'm from. They had an incredible space called the Moon Archives, where I saw so many films I never would have seen before. And they suggested Donald Cammell would be a great director for DieDieBooks. Big Kenneth Anger connection, and Demon Seed is the AI nightmare.
I believe Donald Cammell is mentioned in the Invocation book, if I'm remembering right. There's lots of footnotes in that book, but yeah.
Nice. Well, how do people get a hold of DieDieBooks, and how do they? And actually, if you have a screening coming up, tell us where if there is a planned screening coming up, and then also DieDieBooks, how they get there.
I wish I could announce both, but we recently got into 2 festivals, but one still hasn't publicly announced yet. But it is, I'll say it's in the Northeast, and that will be at the end of April. So keep an eye out. But at the end of March, we're in Unnamed Footage Festival in San Francisco. So if you're in Northern California, Bay Area, please, or if you just want to take a trip,
or if you're in the Northeast Missouri region.
Oh yeah, if you live down the street from us, we're also screening on April 11th, I think, at Truman State University, which is, a half mile from where we live.
Yes, but if you ever want to see when the movie is screening, like upcoming screenings, you can go to our website, DieDieBooks.com. Click on the little tab Die Video, and it's got all the information about the film. It says where it's playing next, and the trailer and some reviews and stuff. And then also it has our email address, contact@DieDieBooks.com, if you ever want to set up a screening. We'd probably book, if you want to book a screening where you live, you say, I demand to see It Doesn't Get Any Better Than This. Like, just email us and ask us, and we'll work something out. We'll see if
we can find a way to screen it there. We've done it at other places.
We've done it before. So. After Queer Fear Fest, we had a guy email us through the website and say like, oh man, I missed your movie and I really wanted to see it. And Nick was like, well, where do you live, buddy? And he was like, Chicago. And we're like, we got friends there. Help us set up a screening. And then like a month later, we were in Chicago.
2 months later,
in Chicago.
Like that.
So we're maniacs. We'll do it.
We want the movie to be seen by people. We just don't want to release it online.
Yeah.
So
fuck the internet. Except for this podcast channel.
Yeah. Yeah, the internet is a miracle for allowing this conversation to happen. But other than that, fuck it.
And for our website.
Right, yeah. And we couldn't do anything we do without it.
And that's
So
where
we
they
made
find your books as well. So where they go to find where your movie screening, any audience members are
Yep,
interested, they can also go.
DieDieBooks.com. Yep, and
DieDieBooks.
we also have a mailing list. Sign up for our mailing list, and you'll be on the cutting edge of all die news.
Exactly. Yes.
And because I spoke over you, I'll say that address again. It's DieDieBooks.com. I could talk to you guys for the rest of the night, except that you can probably hear that my voice is gradually failing me. It was such a delight to have you on Talking Weird, though. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
And until I chat to you, Nick, and you, Rachel, again, which hopefully will be very soon, and to all the other people out there listening or watching, keep it weird.